Welcome to Supply Chain Now, the voice of global supply chain. Supply Chain Now focuses on the best in the business for our worldwide audience, the people, the technologies, the best practices, and today's critical issues, the challenges and opportunities. Stay tuned to hear from those making global business happen right here on Supply Chain Now.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Scott Luton and Allison Giddens here with you on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's show. Allison, how are we doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing wonderful. You're just getting back from another trip. I think I saw you keynoting at a cyber-related conference. Is
I
that
don't
right?
know. That makes me sound a lot more important. It was one presentation of many, and it was a good time. Tampa.
Well, we'll have to debrief you later, but great to have you here today. We've got an outstanding show lined up. We're going to be diving into the story of a supply chain leader doing big things in the industry, especially from a technology leadership standpoint. So, Allison, one heck of a show teed up, huh?
Heck yes, I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Well, with that said, I want to dive right in. I want to welcome in our featured guest, Alex McGuire, Vice President and Chief Supply Chain Officer for General Dynamics Information Technology. Hey, Alex, how you doing?
Hey, good morning. I'm excellent, Scott. Thanks for having me.
We are tickled pink to have you here, Alex. I know how busy you stay. We appreciate your time. Looking forward to getting to know you a little better. On that note, Allison, where are we starting with Alex?
Well, I just recently got connected to Alex, so I'm very excited to get to know him a little bit better and kind of wanted to level set, learn a little bit about you. Can you tell us about where you grew up and maybe anything that you'd like to share from those days?
Sure thing, Allison. Let's see. I grew up on Long Island. Great place if you've not been there. Great place. So when I was a kid, able to hop on the bike, ride 5 minutes, 10 minutes down to the water. It's not a big island north to south, so you could head to the water and fish pretty much any day after school. Great place to stay connected with the Yankees and Mets.
Oh, you're breaking our
We
heart
won't
with
hold that
that one.
against you. We won't. Yeah, no. It
Yeah,
doesn't
no,
make you a bad person.
in my defense, the time that I grew up watching the Yankees was the time between their win in the late '70s and their win in '96 with Jeter and crew. So
Yes.
I like to tell people that I actually grew up going and watching them lose every year, and people would tell me, "Hey, it's easy to be a Yankees fan." I'd say, "What are you talking about? They've never won in my waking life." Then that obviously changed again in '96.
Yes. What a run. All right. So we got to talk really quick about the '96 World Series, because that's one that for Atlanta Braves fans like Allison and I has stung forever. Jim Leyritz hitting a 3-run homer off Mark Wohlers. Man, that was Andrew Jones, which should be a Hall of Famer, hopefully soon. That was like his coming out party. I want to say he hit 3 homers as a rookie in that World Series. I think, Allison, does that sound about right?
What did you have? What did you have for breakfast, Scott? Do you remember any of that, or just the '96 World Series?
No.
Yeah, that's amazing. I can't believe that memory. I couldn't give you stats or specific plays. I just remember the win. But maybe that's me rubbing it in there.
Well, first off, I can appreciate true fans that stick with their team during the losing years, and then they're rewarded. I wish all fans were rewarded like the Yankees fans were during that run, but they're rewarded when things turn, and it makes those good years so much better and more special. It just came at the cost. We thought the Atlanta Braves were going back to back from '95 and '96. They even had the series lead, but hey, that's sports. That's how it goes. So more of a Yankees fan than a Mets fan, Alex? Is that accurate?
Oh yeah, for sure. That's inherited, right? My dad was
Yes.
watching the Yankees. I watched the Yankees.
Love it. Allison, if I can intrude on your question here, I want to talk about food for a second with Alex. So growing up in Long Island, what's one dish that was just inseparable from your childhood?
Oh man. Two things come to mind, but neither one's really related, right? One, again, Long Island, you're surrounded by water. seafood, right? And if you're out there, catching fish with your family, nothing like coming home at the end of that day and grilling up your own catch. So
Mm,
that really was special, and I think I even appreciated how special that was, since that was reality that I could do that all the time. And you have, great portions of the country where you can't just go out and do that any day.
mm.
So that's one. The other is, my mother is Puerto Rican, and so I grew up, kind of getting to do the steak and potatoes life, and then also some really great kind of Spanish style dishes. So
Mm.
lucky.
Allison, making me hungry. I don't know about you.
Oh man, and I love that because that's so different than I mean, if you think of New York, you think your pizza, So I kind of figured you'd say something Italian. So I love the seafood and Spanish lean that's awesome.
That was there too, for sure. But you're right. There's so much more, so
It's
much more
just goes
to
to
New
show
York
you.
than pizza and bagels. So much
Heck
more.
yeah, heck yeah.
Well, we really appreciate the chance to kind of get to know you a little better on a personal level, even if it did come at it poured some salt in our wounds, didn't it,
Well,
Allison?
at least he's not a Dodgers fan. I mean,
Right?
then we would have to cut
Oh,
the interview short. You know what I mean?
yes,
So yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
those fans in New York are Mets fans, aren't they?
pretty much.
Because you
Yeah,
couldn't be a
yeah.
Dodgers fan, then the Dodgers left. You couldn't be a
You're
Yankees
right.
fan. You had to be a Mets fan.
That's
You're
fair.
right. You're right. I've got family in New York, and they're either Mets fans or Yankees fans, and there's no overlap.
Oh,
Well,
that's
I'm
right.
glad you connected those dots, and we'll have to dive into some of the reasons why the Dodgers are not at the top of our love list here lately. But we'll save that for a later show, Allison and Alex. Um, Alex, I want to shift gears with you. I
Yeah.
want to talk business, talk leadership, talk perspective, point of view. We're going to talk about your current role in General Dynamics, information technology in just a second. But prior to your current role, what's a role or two that you held that really shaped your worldview?
Yeah. Sometime before General Dynamics from GDIT, I was lucky enough to work for PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC. Um, and I started in a U.S. regional role there in supply chain and procurement. But then I was lucky enough to get to lead global IT sourcing and procurement at that company. And as far as shaping worldview, right? There's just nothing like being in a role like that, where you're working with 150 countries across the world, um, to work on strategic sourcing and procurement, and some of the biggest deals that the company need to get done in order to keep the company operating, right? So getting to work, and plan on big end user device or big software procurements and deployments, and not just doing that kind of in your own bubble, but having to collaborate with people in Germany, China, Australia, South America, right? All these different places, um, you know, getting to leverage their unique skill sets, their perspectives on how the deal, needs to be architected and satisfy their local needs. Um, it's a, it was an amazing learning experience.
Mm. Um, Allison, kind of, I want to do a follow up question to Alex, and also maybe pose this to you, Allison, since you lead a manufacturing operation. We all value relationships, right? That's certainly how Allison and I are geared. It's kind of what I'm starting to pick up from Alex. Um, the value of investing. If we've learned anything, through the pandemic and now, unfortunately, through what's taking place in Ukraine and that region, the value of relationships, especially from that, the sourcing procurement standpoint, but just being able to make it happen and have a strong, vibrant supply chain upstream and downstream, filled with trust. And you gotta take care of your suppliers, right? Because a supply chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Alex, if you first could speak to that, and Allison, I'd love for you to speak to that as well. Alex.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and it's been something that I've really had to learn in my career, to be honest, right? I'll just to be, really transparent and honest. I think I started my career thinking, just work really hard, right? Work really hard, be very technically good at your job, and things
Mm,
follow. And certainly, right? you can't, in supply chain, you can't negotiate deals, you can't mitigate risk, right? You can't put big enterprise deals in place without building your technical acumen. But you learn pretty quickly that that's just one ingredient, and that you're nowhere without people. And that, so to your point, that's your suppliers. Are you treating each other well? Are you treating each other with respect? Are you making time for each other when things are going well, so that you're not just calling when things aren't going well? Um, that's important. And then, of course, we can talk about it, now or later, right? But that extends to the team as well. Um, you know, um, we are nowhere without that really strong team that's around you and helping to make it happen every single day.
Yep. Love that, Alex. Strong vibes, lots of alignment there, lots of kindred spirits. Allison, love to get your take on this.
No, I love that. I totally agree. And right when you said, Alex, about making sure that you've got that good relationship with suppliers, even when things are going well, it really made me think, okay, who have I reached out to recently that just to say thanks, or just to check in on them? And it's crazy because my mind immediately went to, okay, well, who's done that for me? It's like, well, hold on, this is a two-way street here. So yeah, no, that's a really good point.
Awesome. All right. So I want to move ahead to General Dynamics Information Technology, GDIT. Is that right? Can we call it that, Alex?
Yeah, GDIT. That's right. That's the lingo.
GDIT. Okay, I might save 7 minutes in this interview by being able to use that acronym. But hey, let's level set a bit. It's one of our favorite words around here, right? Because it's really important to not assume that our listeners, although we have the savviest, most intelligent audience in all of digital media, I've been careful to level set what folks may not know and not assume anything there. So for the handful of folks that may not know, what does the company do?
Yeah, so I just at the highest level, we provide technology solutions and IT services to the government, specifically defense, federal civilian, health, intelligence, and homeland security markets. So, our company is helping to build capabilities that support some of the government's most complex projects and missions.
That is quite a niche, Alex. And it's a niche, but it's also very broad. Those niches that you mentioned, those are deep industries with common but also unique needs, right?
Yeah, it's really true, and it's motivating. I've worked for a few different types of companies, and supporting them in their supply chain with great missions. But it's really inspiring, right? When you know that that the work we're doing, right, are enabling IT systems or projects that are supporting, um, government missions, right, around things like the VA, Department of State, Army, right, and the list goes on. But to have that connectivity, right, with what some truly amazing people are doing in armed services and our government, be able to support that, it's it really is amazing. I've never loved being in supply chain as much as I do now, supporting that.
Wow. I love that. I can hear you jumping out of bed in the morning, seriously,
Yeah,
because of the
it's no
types
joke.
of folks and projects and organizations you're supporting. Allison, along these lines, you and I are big military aviation buffs for a variety of reasons. Buffs, I'm a big nerd when it comes to military aircraft. I'll be honest with you, Allison. Speak to, because, your company, Win-Tech, obviously plays in that space. Speak to that, kind of along the lines of what Alex was just sharing.
It's really cool to see that the big picture. So we do a lot of aerospace defense products. So we do the product side rather than the service side. And it's cool to see how it's all integrated and how, going back to the supply chain in general and your suppliers, that getting everybody to kind of play ball and be on the same sheet of music, that no matter what you're providing, whether government is your end user or your customer, no matter what, we're all in this for the same ultimate goal, and that is USA. USA. No, but it's it is. It's that supporting our civilians, our government, our country.
Yeah, it's really amazing when you look at you take your F-22, your C-130, you name it, the supply chain that comes together to ensure, and the table stakes are critical. Not only protecting that pilot's life, but also being able to support the mission, national security, and beyond. So it's amazing. I appreciate what organizations like both of yours, Alex and Allison, do to protect that and enable that and optimize it. So let's keep going down. So, Alex, beyond the military aviation nerds here, we're also big supply chain nerds, and you're a chief supply chain officer at Gdit. Tell us, we could probably speak hours about all the things that your fingers and toes are in, but what are a couple of key priorities you could share with us?
Certainly in this industry, it's risk. Um, and I'm going to say risk with a capital R, meaning in its broadest sense, right? Because certainly we're hearing about things like cyber risk all the time, right? That gets the big press, and you've seen executive orders coming out about you know that focused on protecting, focusing on cybersecurity and improving cybersecurity in the government and in the supply chain. But it's so much more than that, right? Everybody knows now with COVID, there's delivery risk. That's really really present and needs to be managed. Right? Contractual risk. There's a never-ending list of things you need to think about nowadays in supply chain. Everybody, I think, knows it. It's been talking about it. It's not just about negotiating a great deal anymore, right? It's not about controlling costs. Can't save your way to zero, all that kind of thing. So really, it's you know, negotiating great deals is your table stakes, and then on top of that, a great supply chain needs to be managing risk, and that's not easy to do. So it's top of mind always for us.
hmm Speaking of cyber risk, we've seen just in the last couple of weeks, logistics firms, couple household names get interrupted their operations from cyber attacks. Allison, I know that's kind of up your alley of interest and expertise. Your quick comment there.
No, he's absolutely right. Alex is right because there's so many different levels to that risk too. So it's not like when you tackle one, the other one goes away. These are all just compounding each other, and so it's tough to wade through the noise, but it's there for sure.
It's everything is interconnected. It really is. And gosh, once some of these risks that y'all both were speaking to, if you don't mitigate one of them, you leave yourself open and your organization, your supply chain, to many others. Sometimes at the same time, as we've seen in recent months and years. Alex, let's talk about how the supply chain management organization or team operations at Gdit is supporting government programs. You've kind of alluded to that. Can you any specific examples or programs there?
Yeah, of course. And you're right. There's two aspects to our supply chain job here, right? One is actually just supporting internal operations, right, which is common for a lot of supply chain organizations, right? What is it that the company itself needs in order to run, right? But then for us, you layer on top of that supporting our customers and our customers' needs. So it broadens our supply chain quite a lot. Um, for instance, we have the Department of State is one of those programs where our supply chain team is supporting their day-to-day needs. What do they need? Um, and then that also includes when there are situations around the world. Things like when there are natural disasters like Irma. Um, our supply chain is there in order to deliver what the Department of State needs worldwide.
It seems like contingencies are just it's the name of the game these days. And it's really amazing. Allison, I'd love to get your comment here. It's amazing how proactive so much of our planning has become based on the immersion of technology and how we're using it. But the surprises just keep getting, unfortunately, bigger, and it seems like more frequent. But Allison, speak to that a bit.
It's crazy too to think that you can't just create a template of a project and basically say, all right, here's the plug and play. When the government calls, we'll give them this, and then we can plug in ABC. everything is so unique and the needs are so unique. I mean, speaking back to the global work that ultimately GDIT has their fingers in, because we are global. Everything is global in our industries for what we're doing right now. So to think that there is no real plug and play, so you're having to constantly be on the move, constantly evaluating risk. There's a lot going on, and it takes everybody, again, singing from the same sheet of music.
No kidding. And the music changes sometimes by the hour, maybe even sometimes by the minute on some of the tougher days. Alex, I want to shift gears once more. We're a fast moving conversation. I think we're throwing a lot of stuff
I like
at
it.
you. That's the only way to be, right? It's the only way to be. It's like the Baskin Robbins approach. I don't want just the butternut pecan. I want to have some of the double chocolate, some of the Oreo. I want a little bit of it all.
We keep coming back to
So,
food here. I wonder if you did have breakfast.
Yeah,
hey,
see?
it takes a lot of comfort food to get through the times that we're facing, right? It's good to depart from email and from the news and sit down with something good to eat. I tell you. Let's look at the when it comes to global supply chain. Then let's broaden out our conversation a bit, Alex. When it comes to global supply chain, we've kind of talked a lot of different things here, from risk mitigation to relationships, sourcing, some of the unique aspects of the projects and the types of projects and customers that y'all are serving at GDIT. But what else has your attention? Whether it's news, innovation, challenges, you name it, good news, whatever. What's one or two things that has your attention more than others right now?
I mean, we've talked about a couple for sure. Managing risk stays top of mind, but probably data analytics and automation. I just find that exciting. Just finding those ways to um, create a more efficient supply chain, right? And reduce the amount of manual touches that our team has to make on a day-to-day basis, so that you go back to the importance of people, right? Continuing to refocus their efforts on the strategic, right? So instead of spending time trying to track various risks manually, right? The more data analytics and kind of risk alerts that we've got and that are being kind of processed in machine kind of form, right? The more that we can focus our people on analyzing those risks, on socializing those risks with the right decision makers through governance, right? Engagement with our CISO, engagement with our programs, right? So automation for the sake of making sure that our folks can really be focused on the strategic.
I love that, Allison. I'm gonna come to you for a quick follow up in just a second. But Alex, also kind of what you're speaking to, what I heard is also freeing up your people from some of the
Yeah,
mundane activities that you can really apply, modern day technology to, and creating opportunities for them not only to bring more value to the table using their judgment and expertise, but probably in a more rewarding way for their career path, right?
yeah, absolutely. It's more rewarding for the career path. It's fun to think about those innovations and work with some incredibly talented teams we have to actually implement them. It makes everything more fun. And then, the really exciting part of it is, moving more and more away from reactive, right? We're never going to be able to, um, completely predict everything that happens, right? So you're always going to have aspects of reactiveness that are in the supply chain, but really exciting to think about, helping people, like you said, enjoy the job more and put yourself in a position where we can get to more predictive about, whatever it is, risk, price, etc.
I love that, Alex. Allison, speak to that a second, and then I think we're going to, unless Alex want to share anything else, I think we're going to shift gears a bit. But Allison, speak to what Alex is talking about there, kind of putting your people in a position to not only deliver the most value to the organization, to the mission, but also to in a role that is most rewarding and fulfilling to them.
Yes, definitely. And I also heard a lot of being able to take the stuff that we know and that we're good at and applying it to, whether that's automation or whether that's being able to do the simpler things more effectively and efficiently, just making us better at our jobs in general. And I think that the idea of implementing a lot of the automation and being able to take out the mundane, I think that's also key to attracting the next generation, the next workforce, because the younger generations, they don't want to do the boring stuff. They have already become light years ahead of many of us. So let's put their skills to better use. So in light of that and kind of migrating into the
Oh,
workforce conversation.
Allison,
Oh, wait, you've
if I
got,
can interject for a second, because I got to
sure.
speak to with 3 children at home.
Oh,
Light.
yeah.
I'm glad you said light years plural, because holy cow, to see what they're doing now with technology at their ages of 12, 9, and 8, it's amazing.
Do they want
Amazing. But
jobs?
yeah, hey, Allison, we'll make the
We're
connection. We'll
hiring.
see. But I got one more football analogy before we move into your next question, Allison. Both of y'all made me think of, as you're describing about the use of technology these days. We hear the phrase blocking and tackling all the time, right? And it's really kind of meant to not to demean the skills that are really involved in football when it comes to that, but it's really meant to be like the stuff that just has to happen, right? Almost in your sleep. Imagine a football team if you could just ensure you could apply technology where blocking and tackling was going to be world class, and you could save all your time to the next level. Imagine how dominant that football team would be. It'd be like I'm assuming you're a New York Giants fan, Alex,
Oh, I'm going
maybe?
to disappoint you. No, I never got into it much while I was there, and then when I went to school in Boston, I became a Patriots fan. So,
Oh, well,
um,
that's even a
yeah,
better example, frankly. It's a very better example. And no, not throwing any shade to our Giants fans, listeners. They had some great years in
nope.
'91 with Otis Anderson, right? But man, the
See, how
Patriots
do you
talk
know that
about.
stuff? Like, how do you just pull
I,
this
It's
I'm
out
a
of
big
amazing.
thin
nerd.
air?
I'm a big nerd, Allison. But Alex, that's an even better example, because gosh, talk about just the table stakes and the basics of what the Patriots have been able to do, so that they can spend more time and attention on the proverbial skill positions in the game. And it's led to what, 5 or 6, whatever, how many titles they've had, right?
Yeah, no, it's so true. And it's funny because I know I'm going to go back to baseball too, right? Because I use this metaphor all the time, which is kind of small ball, right? Really focusing on hitting those singles, hitting those doubles. You get that small ball strength down. It's the same kind of concept, right? Everything else, then you start to layer on top of it the home runs, right? And you win games. Um, Absolutely. Um, that's how I see it for supply chain as well.
I love
Gotta
that one.
master those basics and be strong with that.
That's right. I love that one even better. Analogies like speed never slumps, or in basketball, length, height doesn't never slumps. Some of these basics, right? You put yourself in position to build on the basis. Okay, Allison, thank you for allowing me to kind of go down one little more path. But what are we talking next
Of
with
course, of
Alex?
course. Any chance I can hear more stats and you just pull these, you are a veritable Encyclopedia Britannica. And for that
Oh,
next generation, what those are books that they used to have. No, so yeah,
what
no,
about
on
Funk
that
and
topic,
Wagnalls? Funk and Wagnalls, as I thought.
I've had to
That's talking about
explain that
more
to my daughters
obscure.
too.
Did you? All right. So those are
so
books. That's
on
funny,
the
Allison.
these are those things, right? No, so for that next generation and for those for the younger folks looking for a career in this industry in supply chain, what would you, Alex, give as career advice, key piece of advice you'd offer them if they thought, I want to be in Alex's shoes one day?
It's a funny question to even answer, right? Because I don't know about you guys, but I don't feel internally older than 22. So I still feel like the person who's starting in his career. And so it feels a little strange and alien to give anybody else advice.
Mm.
Um, but but I do reflect on some things, like we talked about some of these concepts, right? About um, you know, that I once thought, technical proficiency was everything, and then I really had to learn that it is, people, it's relationships. valuing those. So along those lines, I think that things that I've learned that I think about every single day. Um, one, um, that technical skill set that's important, right? And there's going to be times when you guys have probably been through this. You're just working too many hours. You're going through rough patches. You don't realize it at the time, but it's actually a value. Right? I mean, I remember feeling frustrated at times and kind of looked at the number of hours and the amount of work as a little bit of a burden. And I think I realized over time that I had to reframe that and realize it was an opportunity, right? And that I could shift to, instead of I have to do this thing today, I get to do this thing today,
Right.
right? I get to learn, I get to help, right? I get to just be a part of making something a little bit better. And I think when I learned to perceive the day to day in that way, it was a shift for me, right? And I didn't have that in my 20s and my 30s. There may be a lot of people in their 20s and 30s who do, but I didn't. But I think once I learned to see the day to day as an opportunity to learn, to grow, to get stronger, um, that shifted for me. So that attitude mindset, um, and just knowing that when you come out the other end, of putting together that day-to-day significant effort, um, right? That may be painful at times. You come out stronger, and that's what gets you where you want to be.
I really
Allison, I
like
love
that. I
that.
like that.
Your take?
Yep. I like the idea of I don't have to do this. I get to do this. I like that a lot.
Yes, it kind of embraces that daily gratefulness or gratitude, rather. That sometimes can, if you're having a tough day, sometimes that's maybe the last thing on your mind. But really, when you think about what's going on in other places around the world, we've got it really good. And being grateful, and Alex, how you spoke to how that kind of allows you to really lean in more and probably have a bigger impact hour to hour, day to day. All right. So, Allison, you skipped over a question. So, since you skipped over a question, I'm going to pose it to both of y'all. So, Allison, we're going to talk about eureka moments, one of my favorite questions. So, I'm going to pose it to Alex, and then I'm coming to you too, Allison. You're not getting out of answering that question. So, when you think of the last couple of years, again, it's one of the themes of our conversation. How much. Not only is it different, is it more challenging, but it's newly challenging, right? We've had the industry, supply chain, global business has had some long held challenges, but man, we have really loaded up the cart on new, complex, new challenges that are new to business leaders and organizations alike. So, with that as a backdrop, when you think of the eureka moment, maybe one in particular that really has been intriguing and impactful for you, Alex, in recent years, what would that be?
You know, some are probably worth repeating, right? I think that we've talked a little bit about, when you think about COVID and you think about, supply chain constraints, um, you know, the one of the things was that, I always knew that supply chain could be strategic, right? And that you could rely on supply chain to really, help you with better deals and to manage risk. Uh, but certainly, the past couple of years have um, showed me that it's even more than that, right? It's no longer about having a strategic supply chain. In my mind, supply chain really can be your competitive differentiator. I'm not sure before the last couple of years that I personally necessarily saw supply chain as a competitive differentiator even, right? But nowadays you just see it, and there's certain companies where their supply chains are or were more durable going into this, and they're moving through, or navigating through this environment in a more agile fashion than others, and it's amazing to watch. So certainly, eureka moment. The supply chain is not just strategic, but it really can be, the difference maker at a lot of companies.
Agreed, agreed. And part of that comes from how we've empowered consumers via e-commerce, but also in retail and in other different ways to expect for companies and business to meet them where they are at the price that they want, with the product and the choice and the quality and the experience. And by the way, especially from a retail standpoint, we're going to take it back and make that easy to ensure they've got what they want. I tell you, I'm not sure what we're going to be tackling in 50 years from now, but this era we're living through now, to your point about how supply chain is positioned to be one of the most important differentiators and difference makers in business, it is absolutely fascinating. Allison, eureka moment for you in the last couple of years?
I think for me, it's really been the new understanding that so much more is interconnected than I think I gave it credit for. The systems thinking angle of things that, of course, we can look back and say, well, of course, that happened. That's because of that. Um, Everything from, I mean, I know for months we talked about the toilet paper shortage during COVID, and then all of a sudden, then we started seeing bullwhip effect and you started seeing sales on toilet paper because there was too much. Things like that. Those kind of like mini pieces of supply chain observations were fascinating to me. But now that we're dealing with this off ramp of COVID and the workforce challenges and fallout from everything from the push to get vaccines out to just all these pieces that are interconnected that ultimately are playing into a lot of the things that Alex talked about earlier, the risk assessment of, okay, I need to plan accordingly because if this happens, I need to pivot and do this. So a lot of those kind of conversations just seems to me to be moving a lot quicker.
Well said, Allison. Completely agree. Okay, Alex, we have reached near the end of our time with you here today. Thanks so much for joining us. Really, we're going to have you back, and we're going to maybe bolt on a couple more hours so that we can really dive deeper into your sports past, Alex, and your culinary past. But how would you suggest? I imagine beyond all that's on your plate at General Dynamics Information Technology, I imagine you're pretty active in industry, doing a bunch of different things. But how can folks connect with you and learn more about GDIT?
Yeah, absolutely. We're always looking to connect with folks, especially amazing talent. So for us, GDIT website, I'm on LinkedIn, anything like that works. We want to hear from folks.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Alex McGuire, really have enjoyed your time here today. Thanks so much for spending it. Alex is Vice President and Chief Supply Chain Officer for General Dynamics Information Technology, and we hope to see you again really soon, Alex.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Thanks, Alex.
All right. Allison, home run guest.
Cool.
I tell you, we shot
he's
through.
fun.
He really is, and I'll tell you, we could have spent so much more time on the front of that conversation, but also
on the food and sports.
Right,
It
right.
always isn't it that way? I mean, you can really sell a person.
And judge your character as long as they like sports and food, right?
Exactly. Right. There you go.
I think from a leadership standpoint, Alex seems to be a very conscious, deliberate study of forward-looking leadership. So I got to ask you, Allison. I got two quick questions before we wrap with you. First thing is, what if you think back what everything that Alex McGuire with GDIT shared with us here today? What's one thing that you would suggest to our listeners that they really wrap their head around?
I think it's really important that the people piece. And he stressed it from an early point, even from riding his bike to go get seafood with family as a kid and spending time all the way through enabling his team to be able to be efficient and effective using automation and technology and just teamwork in general. But those relationships, I think, are vital, and that's I think that the key theme today.
Agreed, and also to add to that, empowering your people, whether it's technology or other things, right? I talk about this a lot, but we were having a panel session about a year or so ago, and it was a supply chain executive from a big hardware organization, a well-known hardware organization, and she was talking about how some employee requests pre-pandemic. One was related around expense reports and how they can make it easier, and all the employees were asking for certain things, and leadership said no. And then she was talking about that here in the middle of the pandemic where everything else has changed. And she was like, what were we thinking? Of course, let's do this. This is easy. And it was a very powerful eureka moment for me, because sometimes you're dealing in small potatoes and you don't even know, right? And that should be just table stakes. Let's make it let's make it the easy stuff. Let's make it easy, right? Let's take care of our people and make their day-to-day as easy as possible, especially based on everything else they're tackling. So I love Alex's take on so many things here today. So, Allison, thanks for facilitating today's interview. But let's make sure folks know how to connect with you. You're not only at Win-Tech, where you lead the company there, but you're doing a lot of great work in the community with things like the Dave Krejci Foundation. How can folks connect with you?
Find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect there. I'm there a lot. Allison Giddens on LinkedIn. And feel free to reach out.
It is just that easy. She's everywhere, folks. She's everywhere. Allison, a pleasure to have these conversations with you. Big thanks to all the great work.
This was fun.
It was a lot of fun. And I appreciate your time here. Big thanks again to Alex McGuire with General Dynamics Information Technology, home run interview here today. Folks, thank you to our listeners that make all this possible. Hopefully you enjoyed today's episode. I want to encourage you to find Supply Chain Now wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss conversations just like this one. But whatever you do, hey, be like Alex and Allison. Hey, do good, give forward, be the change that's needed. And on that note, we'll see you next time right back here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for being a part of our Supply Chain Now community. Check out all of our programming at supplychainnow.com and make sure you subscribe to Supply Chain Now anywhere you listen to podcasts. And follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. See you next time on Supply Chain Now.